from words on a page to intelligent objects describing the building. I'm sure there's much more than that, Stephen, and we need to update your biog. Without further ado, I will hand you over to
is a client, supplier and consultant in both the private and public sectors. Her key achievements to date include the complete facilities design and operation of Barclays headquarters in Canary Wharf, from which she was involved in from inception to completion, along with overseeing the full mobilisation of 1 million square feet and 5,000 occupiers. She has an MSc in Facilities Management and is a certified member of the BIFM and Fellow of RICS, as well as being a BSI committee member for the European FM and Construction Standards. Over to you, Deborah.
Thank you. Probably give you a little bit of an intro to soft landing for those that don't know what it's about, government soft landing. Hopefully you're all starting to understand a bit more about it now and why it's so important, but also explain why we're moving on in government from actually developing the policy to actually full-on implementation in readiness for our mandate. So a bit of background just for those that don't know. Government soft landings was one of the objectives of the original government construction strategy back in 2000. GSL is very much part of the whole BIM task group and the BIM agenda, and it's very much packaged in there. BIM cannot, for me, cannot work in isolation and cannot bring in the benefits. Construction process with the right people, the collaboration piece. It sets the operational expectations very early on, so we set some key criteria very much in the strategy and design phases, and we use that throughout the BIM process. And we enable early and effective use of the asset and have the right people involved in there on the project team. And we establish a very clear regime for post-occupancy evaluation, which we are saying is going to be 3 years post-PC. So some of you, I introduced you to Pam when I was here last year. Pam's our property asset management champion. I'd like to say she's based on me, but I don't think I can get away with that one anymore. Well, I've got someone in my team that does look like that, so I might have to get her dressing up like that. That's a very key person, so she's our GSL champion. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. We have moved into an implementation phase, which basically means the policy has now been developed, it's been signed up. We know what we're doing, all the documents and the guidance is written, there's lots of standards out there, but really it's about getting those measures in, and we're using the departments for a GSL stewardship group to very much test and embed and check those benefits. So the three key measures for us that we set in the beginning of a design process are functionality and effectiveness, i.e. how do you want to use your asset. For government, we're not developers, we build something because we want to use it. So actually, you know, build a hospital, a school, whatever it might be, it's got some very key criteria of what we want to do. The environmental measures, which are very much all out there about energy, water, waste, etc. And financial, which is a very key one for us, because it's not just about financial on the CapEx side, which everyone concentrates on, we're talking about the OpEx. So we set the operational budget very early on in the strategy. We set our key criteria, and we say, okay, this building should not, or infrastructure should not cost more than this to operate. And during that design and construction phase, if anything changes that affects that operational budget, we've got the ability to challenge. And that's why it's very important to us. And that's where really the basis of the whole life costing comes in. So it's the CapEx and the OpEx that equals the TOTEX for us, which is very key. So just a reminder of some key players in there. There's a real mugshot there. So the BIM task group, so a lot of you know some of the players in that task group. This is not the whole task group, but it's the ones that help focus very much around the GSL agenda. Terry Stocks is the chair. He is also a colleague of mine at Ministry of Justice. David Philps, I'm sure most people know the Philpster. And Rob Manning. And Rob Manning's been very key in all the development of GSL and a real advocate for it. So that's very important to us. We now have the GSL Stewardship Group. The GSL Stewardship Group really now own it and taking the policy forward, because they are the departments in the GSL Stewardship Group. That is chaired by Andrew Digby, who's also MOJ. Roy Evans works within that group as well. And I lead on the policy. So although I've changed jobs since I was last here, because some of you have seen me before, I was in the Cabinet Office, I've now moved into MOJ as well, which is quite nice in a way, because we've got Terry and Andrew there and myself. So we're actually putting it all into practice and say how you can do it in government. So interesting times ahead for us. The BIM for FM group is a really important group for us, because that's an industry group. And the industry group is about getting the key message out there, particularly to the FM industry. We've been quite laid back, I guess, Martin can answer this, in picking up the mantle of why it's important for FM. The benefits are really there for FM, and I've been very much on the bandwagon of trying to get FM on board. We've got some real good key early adopters and taking that mantle. Skanska are here today and they're going to tell you what they're doing. But there's still a lot of messaging and a lot of challenge within the FM industry, which is why we're using the FM industry bodies in the BIM for FM group to really help get the messaging across. So the key elements for us moving forward in GSL, leadership and implementation of GSL is key to us. That's why we've got the GSL Stewardship Group. It has the PAM people in there, so PAM's people, which are, like they tend to be the estates managers, the FM managers, that have lots of different titles, but they're the GSL champions. So every department has a GSL champion identified. They're part of the GSL Stewardship Group. They're doing all the testing and challenging and checking that it works for them, because they have to get ready for the mandate in 2016. So, but they're very key to us in actually driving the whole initiative forward now in government. Industry adoption, lots of messaging out to industry. I've been very much doing a lot of that, particularly in the FM industry, but also to the construction and design industry, so we've got all sides of the story so they understand why it's important for us to work together. Academic research, huge amount of research seems to be coming my way at the moment, which is really interesting to see. And a lot of the research is now very much focused on the BIM to FM piece, which is quite encouraging. So really using what's coming through. And BIM and GSL in practice, I mean, part I think of the lack of FM in the uptake is they don't quite understand what's in it for them, why it's important to them. So there is some messaging that we need to do and saying, actually, where we're trialling it, this is the benefits that are really coming through. And it's not just for us, it's industry that are trialling it as well. What are the benefits that are coming through for them? So we're working with BIFM and BISRIA collectively, and hopefully going to start producing some case studies so everyone can see why it's really beneficial and why they should really do that as well. Lots of standards out there. PAS 1192.3 rolls off the tongue. It's the asset information model. It followed PAS 1192.2, but the asset information model really is about the operational data, and that's the taking the BIM model into the CAFM systems, how we do that, etc. GSL inclusion there's a BS standard already out there called BS 8536. We're just updating that to include GSL, and we're going to look at how we do a standard post-occupancy evaluation. And then also going forward, we've still got to bottom out the whole contractual piece, how we tie in from construction to FM, what are the contractual elements for us in government, how we're going to put that in there. The training, because there are gaps in the people that are in property asset management in government. They don't necessarily have the design construction experience they might need, so we need some training and to fill those gaps. And obviously the future BIM level 3, here you've got a view room here, so I'm sure Mark View talks about that quite a lot, so I'm not even going to touch it. This is Pam, very important person. Now, so the people that are on the GSL stewardship group are really key for making this happen in industry, in government. They have a GSL stewardship group which is now meeting bi-monthly. They're very focused on driving forward GSL in government and what it means to them, and testing everything and using all the documentation that we have and seeing that it really works for them or not. They're looking at all sorts of sides of the areas that are really important to them, i.e. commercial and the contractual issues, which we're trying to bottom out, GSL for infrastructure, and the training. So they've been very involved in what is it the training that they will need for the GSL champions to fill the gaps. They're developing the formal relationships going forward with the relevant bodies. They've already got ICE heavily involved in that on the infrastructure side. And they're building relationships with other government bodies. They've recently met with BIFM and BISRIA to discuss the joint working and the training possibilities for civil service learning. So that's moving forward. And they're planning to hold a supply chain engagement day to clarify some of the GSL policy to industry so everyone understands what it's about and the expectations for central government. Benefits are really key to us. This is the one that you've all known about, I'm sure, Cook and Wood, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but we've got more coming through. National Measurement Office is a new build. We've got some really good figures coming through on what the savings are starting to look like and why it's important for GSL to be implemented. The MOD with a Royal Marines headquarters as well have been using GSL. And obviously Ministry of Justice will continue to use it, but that was quite an interesting one because that was based on a refurbishment, and up to 54% in space savings were identified for having the right people on the project team, which is incredible. That wouldn't have been there had we not had the right people on that team. So we're starting to pull together some of those figures of what the real benefits that are really coming out, which is really important for everyone. I won't dwell too much on the data and stuff because I think there's some stuff going on in one of the round tables, I think, on OIRs and EIRs, so I won't dwell too much. But it's really just to show, what the important element for us is around the Part 3 element and how we've got to bring this data together. And there's lots of bits of data that need to come together from BIM to CAFM to make it work, and then back again. So I'm not going to dwell on that area too much today. And if you download PAS 119 2.3, you'll get this rather lovely diagram, which really is complicated. But it is quite complicated because there's an awful lot of systems that need to integrate in order to kind of make this work as a real asset information model. So really, I ask you to familiarise yourself with that. You can download it for free from BSI website. So have a look at the PAS 119 2.3. What's important, why this is really important is we all talk about BIM model. I won't go on about BIM wash, but basically that BIM data will only ever be kept live by the FMs. The FMs, I think, are still just starting to wake up to that fact. And actually I think the construction and design industry are just kind of starting to realise, yeah, we've got this great big lovely thing, but then who's going to keep it live? It's the FMs. So that's why it's really important. It's only FM that's going to keep that BIM data alive. So lots of benefits and challenges. Benefits, well, it's a huge amount, but I'll just sort of say a few. The tender accuracy, all the data that's coming through. It's really great for an FM company because they've got a huge amount of data to actually accurately do a tender. This is on a new build, obviously. Or perhaps in a refurb example when we start to have more BIM models available to us. The collaboration and early engagement of FM is absolutely crucial to us because we won't get those smooth handover and transition of an operational building unless we have that early engagement. The design impact on the whole life cost, this is about challenging that budget, making sure that operational budget does do what it needs to do. People forget the operational budget can be at least 3 times more than the capital budget, but no one actually thinks about that when they're thinking about the capital budget of building something. And we do need to keep that BIM model visualisation live in order that the FM can use it for future planning. Because, in most cases we're doing a lot of churn, particularly in buildings. You need to replan things, and actually that's a really useful tool we can replan with. Challenges, the contractual link and the POE. Who's going to do it, how we're going to do it, how we're going to tie this in. Still debating that, still working that out. The existing estate, I think Martin's going to cover a little bit about some of the challenges. There's quite a few challenges on the existing estate. You know, this is not all about new buildings for us, for FM, it's about the existing estate. And keeping the BIM model up to date is a real key one for us. So I would ask you to get on the government soft landings bus. It's really important that you just don't think about BIM in isolation. It's about the whole piece. It's the process of wrapping in FM and your operation, your users, your estates people, and that's what GSL is all about. There's also soft landings, which is the BizREA part of it. They're very similar. We've just got a few tweaks on ours, which is why it's called government soft landings. But principally, they're about the same thing. So call it GSL, call it soft land, doesn't matter. It's all about the same thing. It's about involving your end users and your FM. This is a bit of the mantra. It's not just about BIM, it's not just about GSL, it's about BIM. Oh. It's about BIM and GSL. That's what really gives us the better outcomes. So to champion better outcomes for our built assets during the design and construction stages through GSL, powered by BIM, which ensures value is achieved in operations for us. So it's really important. It's a bit stuff at the end there. The operational asset, I should say. That's that. Did I do 15 minutes? Thank you. I'm not doing questions because we've got a Q&A session, so you can ask me now.
Yeah, there'll be two opportunities